The massive space station hung like a metal city in the darkness. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its ports. Some looked like flowing water, made of metal. Others appeared as sharp crystals that could cut through space itself. Then there was a human ship. The USS Liberty looked like someone had taken a brick and stuck engines on it. Its gray hull was thick and plain. No elegant curves or shining surfaces. Just flat metal plates welded together in simple shapes. As it slowly moved toward the docking bay, crews from other ships gathered at viewing windows to watch. "Look at that thing," laughed a tall blue alien with 4 arms. "It moves like a sick whale." "I heard humans only recently joined the coalition," said another creature that looked like a walking tree. "Maybe they sent their garbage truck by mistake." Captain Jake Morrison stood on his ship's bridge and watched the docking process. He was a quiet man in his 40s with gray hair and calm eyes. He had heard the radio chatter from other ships. The jokes, the laughter. He did not care. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, his tactical officer. She was young and eager, with red hair tied back in a tight bun. "The other crews are making fun of us again." Morrison nodded but said nothing. He had expected this. The Liberty was not built to impress anyone. It was built for war. The ship docked with a heavy thud that shook the station. More laughter echoed through the corridors as Morrison walked toward the briefing room. His boots made steady sounds on the metal floor. Other captains passed by in small groups, talking and pointing. The briefing room was huge. Captains from 50 different worlds sat at a curved table. At the center stood Admiral Zethkar, a creature that looked like a giant lizard wearing a uniform covered in metals. His yellow eyes looked down at Morrison as the human entered. "Ah, the human finally arrives," Zethkar said. His voice was deep and mocking. "We were beginning to think your ship broke down." Some captains laughed. Morrison found his seat and sat down without responding. Next to him sat Commander Zilthara, a gray-skinned being with large black eyes. She nodded politely at Morrison. Unlike the others, she did not seem amused by the jokes. "Now that everyone is here," Zethkar continued, "we can discuss the real threat." The lights dimmed and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed a star map with several systems marked in red. "The Devourers," Zethkar said, "machine ships that eat entire planets. They have destroyed 12 worlds in the past month. Our scouts report they are moving toward the core systems." Morrison studied the hologram carefully. He noticed patterns in the attack routes. The Devourers were not moving randomly. They had a plan. "These machines are fast and heavily armed," continued the Admiral. "They adapt to our weapons quickly. Traditional tactics have failed. We need speed and overwhelming force." Captain Veltar, a slim alien with silver skin, raised his hand. "My ship, the Starwind, can reach maximum velocity in 30 seconds. We could strike before they adapt." "Excellent," Zethkar smiled, showing sharp teeth. "What about you, Captain Morrison? What can your vessel contribute?" Morrison looked up from a hologram. "What do we know about their armor?" "Energy-resistant plating that adapts to weapon frequencies," answered another captain. "Why? And their speed?" "Roughly twice as fast as standard coalition cruisers," Zethkar replied impatiently. "Again, why do you ask?" Morrison was quiet for a moment, just curious. Zethkar laughed. "Curious? Yes, I suppose slow ships have time to be curious." More laughter filled the room. The briefing continued for another hour. Various captains volunteered for different missions. Fast ships would scout enemy positions. Medium ships would provide support. Heavy cruisers would engage the main force. "And what about the Liberty?" asked Captain Veltar with a smirk. "Perhaps cargo duties?" Morrison stood up. "I will take reconnaissance in the Kepler 442 system." The room went silent. Kepler 442 was deep in enemy territory. 3 Devourer scout ships patrolled there. It was considered a death mission for most ships. "Captain Morrison," Commander Zilthara said quietly, "that system is heavily defended. A slow ship would not be able to escape if discovered." "I understand the risks," Morrison replied. Zethkar's eyes gleamed. "Very well. The human volunteers for suicide duty. Who are we to stop him? He turned to the other captains. Perhaps this will teach the humans about real warfare. Morrison nodded and left the briefing room. As he walked back to his ship, he could hear the continued laughter behind him. Amy Foster caught up to him in the corridor. "Captain, are you sure about this mission?" she asked. "The Kepler 442 system is a trap." Morrison stopped walking and looked at his young officer. "Amy, what do you think is the most important quality in a warship?" "Speed, sir, or firepower?" "Survival," Morrison said simply. "A ship that cannot survive cannot complete its mission." They reached the Liberty. As they boarded, Amy noticed something she had not seen before. The thick armor plating was not just crude metal. It had layers. Complex patterns were built into the hull design. The weapon ports were smaller than on other ships, but they were positioned with mathematical precision. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Bill Santos was checking systems. He was an older man with thick arms and grease on his uniform. "Captain, I heard we were going to Kepler 442. "That is correct, Chief." "Good," Santos grinned. "It has been too long since we showed these aliens what human engineering can do." Morrison smiled for the first time that day. "Prepare for departure, Chief, and make sure all systems are ready." As the Liberty slowly pulled away from the station, crews from other ships watched from viewing ports. The joke started again. The ugly human ship moved like it was swimming through thick mud. Captain Veltar spoke into his communication device. "This should be amusing. The humans think their flying brick can survive where real warships would struggle." But Morrison was not thinking about the jokes. He was studying the tactical data from Kepler 442. He saw things the other captains had missed. Patterns, weaknesses, opportunities. The Liberty might be slow. It might be ugly. But Morrison knew something the others did not understand. Sometimes the turtle wins the race. As they entered hyperspace, Morrison turned to Amy. "Lieutenant, begin combat preparations." "Sir, we will not reach Kepler 442 for 18 hours. Morrison nodded. "Exactly. That gives us time to be ready." The slow human warship disappeared into the stars, carrying its crew toward a date with destiny. The Kepler 442 system looked peaceful from a distance. A yellow star burned quietly in space, surrounded by dead planets. But Morrison knew better. His sensors showed 3 large objects moving between the worlds. "Devourer scouts confirmed," reported Amy Foster from her station. 3 ships, each about the size of a coalition cruiser. Morrison nodded. The Liberty moved slowly toward the inner system. Behind them, space lit up with the bright flashes of ships leaving hyperspace. The Velkarian strike force had arrived. Captain Veltar's voice came over the radio. "Morrison, stay back and observe. Real warships will handle this." 3 sleek Velkarian ships raced past the Liberty like silver arrows. They moved so fast they were just streaks of light. Morrison watched them go and did not respond to the radio call. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "should we follow them?" "No. Continue at standard cruise speed." Amy looked confused. "Sir, they will reach the enemy first. We might miss the battle." Morrison was studying his tactical display. "Lieutenant, what do you see when you look at those Devourer ships?" Amy checked her sensors. "They are large, heavily armed, and moving in a defensive pattern around a third planet." "What else?" She looked more carefully. "Their hull design is different from the reports. The armor appears to be changing." "Adaptive armor," Morrison confirmed. "It learns from each weapon hit and adjusts to defend against that specific attack." The Velkarian ships reached the enemy first. Captain Veltar's voice filled the radio with excitement. "Engage in the machines. All ships, focus fire on the lead target." Energy beams lanced through space as the 3 Velkarian cruisers attacked. The Devourer ships turned to meet them. Their own weapons fired back with deadly accuracy. At first, the Velkarian attack seemed successful. Their energy weapons burned bright holes in the enemy hulls. But after just a few minutes, something changed. "My weapons are not working." Veltar's voice crackled over the radio. "The enemy armor is deflecting everything." Morrison had expected this. Adaptive armor needed time to learn, but once it did, energy weapons became useless. The Devourers had been in this system for weeks. They had plenty of time to study Coalition weapon types. The battle turned ugly fast. The Devourers' ships surrounded the Valkyrians and began tearing them apart. Veltar's ship lost half its hull plating. Another Valkyrian cruiser was spinning out of control, its engines damaged. All ships retreat. Veltar ordered. The enemy is too strong. The damaged Valkyrian ships tried to escape, but the Devourers followed them. The machine ships were fast and angry. They wanted to finish what they started. "Captain," Amy said urgently, "the Valkyrians are in trouble. Should we help them?" The Coalition Command Center buzzed with activity. Dozens of officers from different worlds worked at glowing screens and holographic displays. At the center of it all stood a massive tactical table, showing the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated Devourer positions. They were spreading like a disease. Admiral Zefkar stood before a gathering of ship captains. His yellow eyes gleamed as he pointed at the largest red marker on the display. Stronghold Omega 5. Intelligence reports this is their main harvesting operation. Over 200 Devourer ships guard a facility the size of a moon. Captain Veltar leaned forward in his chair. 200 ships? Even with our combined fleet, we only have 150 vessels. Which is why we must use speed and surprise. Zefkar replied, "Fast ships will attack from multiple directions. We will overwhelm their defenses before they can adapt." Morrison sat quietly in the back of the room, studying the tactical data on his portable screen. The numbers did not look good. Even if the Coalition ships moved fast enough to avoid heavy losses, breaking through that many defenders would be nearly impossible. "Captain Morrison," Zefkar called out suddenly, "you have been very quiet. What does the human think of our plan?" Morrison looked up from his screen. "I have a question, Admiral. What happens after we break through the outer defenses?" "We destroy the harvesting facility, of course." "How long will that take?" Zefkar frowned. "Perhaps 30 minutes to locate and destroy the critical systems." "And how long before Devourer reinforcements arrive?" "Intelligence estimates 45 minutes. Morrison nodded slowly. "So we need to fight through 200 ships, destroy a moon-sized facility, and escape before reinforcements arrive. All in 45 minutes. "Exactly." Zefkar smiled. "You see why speed is essential." "I see why the plan will fail," Morrison said quietly. The room went silent. Several captains turned to stare at the human. Zefkar's smile disappeared. "Explain yourself, Captain." Morrison stood up and walked to the tactical display. "May I show you something, Admiral?" Zefkar waved him forward impatiently. Morrison touched the holographic controls and brought up detailed scans of previous Devourer battles. "Every engagement follows the same pattern," Morrison said, highlighting different sections of the data. "The Devourers allow enemies to attack first. They absorb damage while their systems learn and adapt. Then they counterattack with perfect defenses." "We know this," interrupted Captain Veltar. "That is why we must strike fast before they can adapt." "But what if the fast attack is exactly what they want?" Morrison asked. "What if they are designed to counter aggressive tactics?" Commander Zilthra, who had been listening carefully, spoke up. "What do you suggest instead, Captain Morrison?" Morrison manipulated the holographic display to show a different approach. A siege. Slow, methodical destruction of their outer defenses. Force them to come to us instead of rushing to them. The room erupted in protests. "A siege takes weeks," shouted one captain. "We do not have weeks," added another. Zefkar raised his hand for silence. "Captain Morrison, your species may be comfortable with slow warfare, but the rest of us prefer decisive action. We will proceed with the original plan." Morrison nodded and returned to his seat. Amy Foster, who had been watching from near the door, approached him. Morrison had been waiting for this moment. "Now we move. Full power to engines." "Sir, full power is still slower than the cruise speed." "I know. Amy, target the lead Devourer with kinetic rounds." Amy stared at her captain. "Sir, kinetic rounds? Those are just metal bullets. Everyone uses energy weapons now." "Do it." The Liberty moved into the battle zone like a slow-moving mountain. The Devourer ships saw it coming and turned to attack this new threat. They fired their energy weapons at the human ship. The energy beams hit the Liberty's hull and did something unexpected. Instead of burning through the armor, they spread across the surface and disappeared. The thick, ugly plating absorbed the energy like a sponge soaking up water. Impossible! Veltar gasped over radio. How are you surviving those hits? Morrison did not answer. He was focused on his targeting computer. Amy, fire kinetic rounds at the lead ship. The Liberty's weapons were different from other Coalition ships. Instead of energy beams, they fired solid metal slugs at incredible speed. The rounds looked simple, but they hit with the force of meteors. The first kinetic round struck the lead Devourer ship in the center. The adaptive armor, which had learned to deflect energy, could not adapt fast enough to stop solid matter traveling at such speed. The metal slug punched through the hull like paper. The Devourer ship shuddered and began leaking atmosphere. Its adaptive systems tried to understand what had happened, but there was nothing to adapt to. Physics was physics. A fast-moving object would always punch through armor if it hit hard enough. Hit them again, Morrison ordered calmly. More kinetic rounds flew from the Liberty. Each one found its target. The Devourer ships tried to return fire, but their energy weapons were useless against the human ship's layered composite armor. The second Devourer began to retreat, but the Liberty was already targeting it. Chief Engineer Santos had designed the kinetic weapons for exactly this situation. They could track and hit moving targets with deadly accuracy. Within 10 minutes, 2 Devourer ships were drifting wrecks. The third tried to escape toward the outer system, but Morrison had anticipated this too. Amy, plot an intercept course. Sir, at our current speed, it will escape before we can catch it. Morrison smiled slightly. Not if we cut off its escape route. The Liberty moved to block the enemy ship's path to hyperspace. The Devourer, damaged and confused, had no choice but to fight. But its adaptive armor was useless against kinetic weapons, and its energy beams could not penetrate the Liberty's defensive plating. The last enemy ship died quietly, its hull torn open by metal slugs traveling faster than bullets. The battlefield fell silent. The 3 Velcarian ships limped back toward the Liberty. Captain Veltar's voice was different now, less confident. Morrison, how did you do that? Our sensors showed your ship was primitive. Morrison finally responded. Captain Veltar, sometimes older methods work better than new ones. But your armor, it absorbed our most powerful energy weapons during the Coalition tests. Layered composite plating, Morrison explained simply. Each layer is designed to absorb and redirect different types of energy. It is not pretty, but it works. Amy was staring at her captain with new respect. Sir, you knew this would happen. You knew their weapons would not work. Morrison nodded. Adaptive armor is designed to counter energy weapons. It assumes all advanced civilizations use energy. But humans still understand the value of kinetic force. Chief Santos came to bridge, grinning widely. Captain, all systems green. The hull took some energy impacts, but nothing penetrated, just like we designed her. Captain Veltar's ship moved closer to the Liberty. Morrison, our ships are badly damaged. We need help getting back to base. Of course, Morrison replied. We will escort you. As the small fleet began its slow journey home, Veltar spoke again over the radio. I owe you an apology, Captain. I underestimated your ship. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Captain, there is no shame in learning. The important thing is that we all survived to fight another day. But even as they traveled home, Morrison could hear other conversations on the Velcarian ships. Many still believed the battle had been won by luck, not skill. They thought the Devourers had been caught off guard. Admiral Zethkar would probably say the same thing when they reported back. Morrison did not care about their opinions. He had learned something important during the battle. The Devourers had weaknesses. Their adaptive systems made them overconfident. They expected enemies to behave in predictable ways. Human tactics were many things, but they were not predictable. Amy noticed her captain's thoughtful expression. Sir, what are you thinking about? Morrison looked at the tactical display, showing Devourer territory. I am thinking that this war is going to be won by the side that adapts fastest. And humans are good at adapting? Morrison smiled grimly. Lieutenant, humans have been adapting since we lived in caves. It is what we do best. The Liberty continued its slow journey home, carrying secrets that would change the war. The Omega 5 system was a graveyard of worlds. 5 planets hung dead in space around a dying red star. But a massive Devourer facility floating between the second and third planets was very much alive. It pulsed with dark energy as it slowly consumed the metal from destroyed worlds. Fleet positions confirmed, reported Amy Foster from her tactical station. 150 coalition ships in attack formation. Morrison watched the main display as the fleet spread out for the assault. Admiral Zethkar's flagship led the center group. Fast Valkyrian cruisers took the flanks. Other alien ships filled the gaps between them. The Liberty hung back with a few support vessels, exactly where fleet anchor ships were supposed to be. All ships, this is Admiral Zethkar. The radio crackled. Begin the attack. Show these machines what coalition firepower can do. The fleet surged forward like a silver wave. Energy weapons lit up space as dozens of ships fired at once. The Devourer defense platforms returned fire with mechanical precision. Look at them go, said Chief Santos, who had come to the bridge to watch. I have to admit, it is a beautiful sight. Morrison was not watching the spectacular light show. He was studying sensor readings and counting enemy positions. Amy, how many Devourer ships do you count? Exactly 200, as intelligence predicted. They are moving to intercept our attack groups. And how many are staying near the facility? Amy checked her displays more carefully. Only about 50. The rest are moving out to engage us. Morrison nodded. This was what he had expected. The Devourers were following their program behavior. Meet aggression with aggression. Match force with force. For the first 10 minutes, the battle looked like it was going well for the coalition. Valkyrian ships danced between enemy formations, their speed allowing them to avoid most return fire. Energy beams from coalition ships burned holes in Devourer hulls. Captain Veltar's voice filled the radio. Their defenses are weakening. Press the attack. But Morrison was watching something else. The Devourer ships that had been damaged were not dying. They were regrouping behind the main force. Their adaptive armor was learning from every hit. Captain, Amy said quietly, the enemy ships are changing their formation. They are pulling back into a defensive shell around the facility. And our ships are following them in, Morrison observed. This was a trap. The Devourers had allowed the coalition to think they were winning. Now the enemy ships formed a tight defensive ring, with the coalition fleet spread out and committed to attack patterns that no longer worked. The change happened suddenly. Devourer weapons, which had seemed inaccurate before, began hitting their targets with deadly precision. Enemy armor, which had been taking damage, now deflected coalition energy weapons completely. My weapons are not working. Captain Veltar shouted over the radio. They're adapting too fast. Captain, why did you suggest a siege if you knew they would reject it? Because now I understand how they think, Morrison replied quietly. And more importantly, I understand how the Devourers think. The briefing continued for another 2 hours. Various ships were assigned to attack groups. Fast scouts would identify weak points. Medium cruisers would exploit breaches. Heavy battleships would provide covering fire. When it came time to assign the Liberty, Zethkar barely looked up from his notes. The human ship will serve as fleet anchor, guard the rear and provide support as needed. Fleet anchor duty, Amy muttered as they left the briefing room. They are keeping us out of real fight. Morrison did not seem bothered. Lieutenant, being in the rear gives us an excellent view of the entire battle. Back on the Liberty, Morrison called his senior staff together. Chief Engineer Santos, Lieutenant Foster, and Communications Officer Lisa Hayes gathered in the captain's ready room. I need to make some equipment requests, Morrison began. Lisa, I want you to set up special communication links with all coalition ships. What kind of links, sir? Emergency tactical channels. Tell them it is for rescue coordination. Santos raised an eyebrow. Captain, Rescue coordination does not require the type of encrypted channels you are describing. Morrison smiled. No, it does not. Amy, I want you to study the flight patterns of every ship in our fleet. Learn their capabilities, their weaknesses, their preferred tactics. Sir, that sounds like intelligence gathering on our own allies. It is. Lisa, what is the maximum range of our tractor beam systems? Tractor beams? Lisa checked her technical manual. Standard range is 5,000 kilometers, but Chief Santos has been modifying them. Santos grinned. I may have extended that range a bit, Captain. Maybe 15,000 kilometers now. Good. Amy, I want you to calculate precise debris patterns for various explosive scenarios. Amy stared at her captain. Debris patterns? Sir, what exactly are you planning? Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying a star chart of the Omega 5 system. I am planning to win a war that everyone else is trying to lose. Over the next few days, Morrison made seemingly random requests. He wanted extra emergency supplies loaded onto other ships. He requested changes to standard communication protocols. He asked for detailed technical specifications on coalition weapon systems. To outside observers, it looked like a cautious commander preparing for disaster. Other captains joked about human pessimism and worst-case scenario planning. But Amy began to see a pattern. The emergency supplies were positioned exactly where they would be most useful during a chaotic battle. The communication protocols would allow the Liberty to coordinate fleet movements without alerting enemy sensors. The technical specifications revealed which ships could adapt their weapons for unconventional uses. Captain, she said one evening as they reviewed battle plans, you are not preparing for defeat. You are preparing to command the entire coalition fleet. Morrison looked up from his calculations. What makes you think that, Lieutenant? Everything you have requested gives us the ability to coordinate and control other ships. But Admiral Zethkar is the fleet commander. Admiral Zethkar will command the fleet until his tactics fail, Morrison replied. Then someone else will need to take over. And that someone is you? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Amy, what is the most important rule of military leadership? Always have a plan? No. Always have a backup plan for when the first plan fails. As the coalition fleet prepared to depart for Omega 5, Morrison made one final request. He asked to speak privately with Commander Zilthara. They met in a quiet observation lounge overlooking the docking bays. Ships from dozens of worlds were preparing for battle. You wanted to see me, Captain Morrison? Commander, you have always been fair to me, even when others were not. I want to give you some advice. Zilthara's large black eyes studied the human carefully. What advice? When the battle begins, keep your ship close to the Liberty. Stay within 15,000 kilometers, if possible. Why? Morrison looked out at the assembled fleet. Because when everything falls apart, you will want to be near the ship that can still fight. Zilthara was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Captain Morrison, do you believe Admiral Zethkar's plan will fail? I believe the Devourers have been waiting for exactly this type of attack. They want us to come fast and aggressive. And what do you believe we should do instead? Morrison smiled grimly. We should give them what they do not expect. The next morning, the coalition fleet departed for Omega 5. 150 ships jumped into hyperspace, carrying the hopes of a dozen worlds. In the rear of the formation, the slow human warship followed quietly. Its captain already 3 moves ahead of everyone else in a game they did not even know they were playing. The Devourer facility loomed before them like a metal moon. Its surface was covered with weapons platforms, shield generators, and massive processing centers that glowed with evil red light. As the coalition fleet approached, defensive systems came online with mechanical precision. Energy shields at maximum strength, reported Amy Foster, counting at least 200 weapon platforms on the surface. Morrison studied the tactical display. The facility was designed like a fortress. Multiple layers of shields, overlapping defensive positions, and automated repair systems. It would take hours to break through using conventional methods. They had 25 minutes before Devourer reinforcements arrived. All ships, this is Morrison. He called over fleet communications. Do not attack the facility directly. Form a defensive perimeter and engage the remaining Guardian ships. Captain Morrison, Admiral Zefkar's voice was angry. We must destroy that facility before reinforcement arrive. Sir, direct assault will fail. We need a different approach. What different approach? We have limited time. Morrison did not answer immediately. He was studying the facility's design, looking for something the Devourers had not considered. Every fortress had a weakness. The key was finding it before time ran out. Amy, scan the facility's power grid. How is it powered? Multiple fusion reactors throughout the structure. Each section appears to have backup power as well. What about the processing centers? The areas that are actually consuming the planetary material. Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. Sir, there appears to be a central coordination node. All processing operations are controlled from a single point deep inside the facility. Morrison smiled grimly. There it is. Sir, the weakness, Lieutenant. The Devourers built this facility for efficiency. Everything is coordinated from one central location, if we can reach that node. But, sir, it is buried inside the facility. We would need to blast through dozens of levels of armor and defensive systems. Morrison was quiet for a moment, thinking. Around them, the Coalition fleet engaged the remaining Devourer Guardian ships using his improvised tactics. Debris and kinetic rounds filled space as both sides adapted to the new type of warfare. Chief Santos to bridge. Came a voice over the internal communications. Go ahead, Chief. Captain, I have been studying this facility. It reminds me of something. What is that, Chief? An asteroid mining operation. Same basic design, same processing layout. I worked on similar projects before joining the military. Morrison's eyes lit up. Chief, what is the standard way to shut down a mining operation? All ships, concentrate fire, ordered Admiral Zefkar. Focus on single targets. But concentrated fire just made the problem worse. The Devourer adaptive systems learned faster when they had more data to work with. Soon, Coalition weapons were completely useless. The trap snapped shut. Hidden Devourer ships appeared from behind the dead planets. They had been waiting, watching, learning. Now they struck at the Coalition fleet from behind. Admiral, Morrison called over the radio, your ships need to withdraw immediately. Negative, Captain Morrison. We can break through if we maintain pressure. Morrison watched as 3 Coalition ships exploded in rapid succession. The Devourers were systematically destroying the faster ships first, cutting down the fleet's ability to maneuver. Amy, prepare for combat operations. Chief, I need maximum power to tractor beam systems. Sir, we are still 15,000 kilometers from the nearest enemy ship. I know. Morrison opened a communication channel to Commander Zilthara. Commander, are you still within range? Yes, Captain Morrison, but my ship has taken heavy damage. Our weapons are useless against their adapted armor. Understood. Follow my lead exactly. Morrison turned to Amy. Target the debris from the destroyed Coalition ships. Use tractor beams to move large pieces into the path of enemy formations. Amy stared at her captain. Sir, tractor beams are for rescue operations, not combat. Today they are weapons. Chief, can you overload our kinetic rounds with additional propellant? Santos grinned. Captain, I can make those metal slugs hit like asteroid impacts. Do it. The Liberty began its strange attack. While other ships fired useless energy weapons, the human ship used tractor beams to hurl chunks of destroyed vessels at the enemy. The Devourers had never encountered this tactic. Their adaptive systems could not predict the path of debris controlled by external forces. A piece of twisted hull plating, accelerated by the Liberty's tractor beam, smashed into a Devourer ship sensor array. The machine vessel spun out of control, unable to target effectively. Impossible, Admiral Zefkar gasped over the radio. How are you hitting them? Kinetic weapons and debris strikes, Morrison replied calmly. Amy, target the Devourer command ship with our main guns. The Liberty's railguns fired their overcharged rounds. The metal slugs, moving faster than bullets and hitting harder than meteors, punched through adaptive armor like it was made of paper. The enemy command ship shuddered, and began leaking atmosphere. All ships. Morrison called over the fleet communication system. This is Captain Morrison. I am taking tactical command. Follow my instructions exactly. You cannot take command. Zethkar protested. I am the Admiral. Sir, with respect, your tactics are getting our people killed. Commander Zilthara, do you copy? I copy, Captain Morrison. Use your tractor beams to grab debris and throw at enemy ships. Aim for their sensor clusters. Tractor beams are not weapons. They are now. Captain Veltar, can you hear me? Veltar's voice was strained. My ship is badly damaged, Morrison. I need you to do something that will seem crazy. Fly directly at the nearest Devourer ship. That is suicide. Not if you follow my instructions. When you get within 2,000 kilometers, fire your escape pods directly at their hull. Escape pods are not weapons either. Today, everything is a weapon. Amy, prepare our next kinetic barrage. The tide of battle began to turn as coalition ships followed Morrison's unconventional orders. Debris hurled by tractor beams smashed into Devourer sensor arrays. Escape pods, fired like missiles, carried electromagnetic pulse charges that disrupted enemy systems. The Devourers had never faced tactics like these. Their adaptive systems were designed to counter energy weapons and conventional missiles. They could not adapt to improvised attacks using rescue equipment as weapons. Captain Morrison, Commander Zilthara called over the radio. It is working. The enemy ships are losing coordination. Morrison was already planning the next phase. All ships, form up on the Liberty. We are going to punch through their defensive line. With respect, Captain, Admiral Zethkar interrupted, your ship is too slow to lead an assault. Admiral, speed is not always an advantage. Amy, show them what our real maximum velocity looks like. Amy's fingers flew over her controls. The Liberty, which had been moving at what everyone thought was full speed, suddenly accelerated. The massive ship had been holding back its true capabilities. Impossible, breathed Captain Veltar. How fast can that ship actually go? Fast enough, Morrison replied. All ships, follow us in. Target their weapon systems with kinetic rounds and debris. Ignore their hulls. Focus on disabling their ability to fight back. The Coalition fleet formed up behind the Liberty like a spear point. The human ship led the charge, its heavy armor absorbing enemy fire, while its kinetic weapons punched holes in Devourer defenses. But Morrison knew this was only the beginning. They had broken through the outer defensive line, but the facility itself was still heavily defended. And somewhere out there, Devourer reinforcements were racing toward the battle. Amy, how long until enemy reinforcements arrive? 30 minutes, sir. Morrison nodded grimly. They had 30 minutes to destroy a facility the size of Moon, while fighting off 50 defensive ships that were adapting to their new tactics. Chief, I need everything the engines can give us. Captain, if I push them any harder, we might lose containment. Chief, if we do not push harder, we lose everything. Santos grinned and headed back to engineering. Aye, Captain. Full power it is. The Liberty charged toward the massive Devourer facility, leading a fleet that had learned to fight like humans. Behind them, the wreckage of conventional warfare drifted in space. Ahead of them, the real battle was just beginning. The Coalition fleet returned to find the massive Devourer facility completely destroyed. The enemy reinforcements, caught in the blast, were either destroyed or fleeing back into deep space. Admiral Zethkar's voice was different when he finally spoke. Captain Morrison, how did you survive that explosion? Morrison, standing on his damaged bridge with his faithful crew around him, smiled slightly. Admiral, we built our ship to survive what faster ships could not. Later, as the fleet prepared to return home, Commander Zilthara approached Morrison privately. Captain, the Coalition Council wants to promote you to Fleet Admiral. Morrison shook his head. I prefer to remain Captain of the Liberty. Why? You could command the entire Coalition Navy. Morrison looked out at his damaged but proud ship. Commander, someone needs to teach the next generation that winning is not always about being the fastest or the strongest. What is it about, then? Morrison smiled. It is about being the one still standing when the battle is over. The slow human warship turned toward home, carrying its crew and its secrets back to a galaxy that would never underestimate them again. You cut the control systems, but that takes too long. Faster way is to overload the processing centers, 'cause a feedback loop that shuts down everything at once. How long would that take? If you could get someone inside with the right equipment, maybe 10 minutes. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The facility's shields were too strong for the fleet to penetrate quickly, but shields were designed to stop energy weapons and large objects. They were not designed to stop people. Amy launched a full spread of escape pods toward the facility. Sir, the crew evacuation pods? All of them. Fill them with volunteers and equipment. Chief, what do you need to overload their processing systems? Electromagnetic pulse charges, some basic tools, and someone who understands industrial systems. You volunteer? Santos grinned. Captain, I have been waiting 40 years to tear apart a Devourer facility from the inside. Within minutes, the Liberty launched 20 escape pods toward the massive facility. The small pods were too small and fast for the defensive systems to target effectively. Most of them made it through the shields and impacted on the facility's surface. Chief Santos to bridge. Came a crackling transmission. We are inside. Beginning search for the central control node. Morrison watched as his people spread out through the enemy facility. They were completely cut off from support, deep inside the most dangerous structure in the galaxy. Captain, Commander Ziltara called over the radio. Devourer reinforcements detected. 50 ships approaching fast. Morrison checked the tactical display. 15 minutes until the enemy reinforcements arrived. His boarding teams needed at least 10 minutes to complete their mission. All ships, prepare for defensive operations. We need to hold this position until the facility is destroyed. The reinforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm of metal and energy. Fresh Devourer ships with full adaptive capability and undamaged systems. They immediately began attacking the Coalition fleet. Morrison, Admiral Zethkar called, We must retreat. We cannot fight both the facility and the reinforcements. Negative, Admiral. We hold position. That is suicide. Morrison was watching the battle unfold on multiple levels. In space, Coalition ships fought desperately against superior numbers. Inside the facility, his boarding team searched for the control center. Everything depended on timing. Chief, report. Morrison called over the communication system. We found the central node, Santos replied, but it is heavily defended. Automated systems and security robots. How long to break through? 8 minutes, maybe 10. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Coalition fleet was taking heavy casualties. They could not hold position for 10 more minutes against this kind of firepower, unless they change the rules again. Amy, target our tractor beams on the facility itself. Sir, the facility is too large. Our tractor beams cannot move something that massive. We are not trying to move it, Lieutenant. We are trying to shake it. Amy understood immediately. The Liberty's tractor beams locked onto the facility's outer structure and began pulling in different directions. The massive station, never designed to handle external stress, began to vibrate. Chief, how is that affecting the internal systems? Captain, you beautiful genius. The vibrations are disrupting their security systems. We can break through now. Other Coalition ships followed Morrison's example. Soon, a dozen tractor beams were pulling at the facility from different angles. The structure groaned and twisted under the stress. All ships, Morrison called, concentrate tractor beam pulls on Section 7. Amy, why Section 7? Because that is where Chief Santos is working, and we want to help him break through faster. The coordinated tractor beam assault created massive structural stress in exactly the right location. Deep inside the facility, security barriers cracked and defensive systems malfunctioned. We are through, Santos reported. Beginning the overload sequence now. Morrison watched the countdown on his display. 5 minutes until the facility exploded. 7 minutes until Devourer reinforcements overwhelmed the Coalition fleet. Chief, can you speed up the process? Captain, If I speed this up too much, the explosion will be bigger than expected. Any ships within 50,000 kilometers will be caught in the blast. Morrison looked at the tactical display. Half the Coalition fleet was within that radius, including the Liberty. All ships, this is Captain Morrison, begin immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. Morrison, Admiral Zethkar protested, "If we withdraw now, the Devourer reinforcements will destroy your boarding teams." "Admiral, in 3 minutes it will not matter." The Coalition fleet began pulling back, but the Devourer reinforcements pressed their attack. Enemy ships closed in, trying to prevent the withdrawal. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "we are not going to make it. Too many enemy ships are blocking our escape route." Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "Amy, remember what I said about the most important rule of military leadership? Always have a backup plan." "Exactly. Chief Santos, how much time do you need to complete the overload?" 2 more minutes, Captain." Morrison looked at his tactical display one more time. The Liberty was the slowest ship in the fleet. It would never reach minimum safe distance in time. But sometimes a slow ship had to make the hard choices. "All ships, continue withdrawal," Morrison ordered. "Do not wait for us." "Morrison, what are you doing?" Commander Zilthara called. "Buying time," Morrison replied simply. "Amy, target all Devourer ships between our fleet and the safe zone. Everything we have." The Liberty turned toward the approaching enemy reinforcements and opened fire with every weapon it possessed. Kinetic rounds flew through space like metal meteors. The ship's tractor beams grabbed debris and hurled it at enemy vessels. Morrison was not trying to win the fight. He was trying to delay it just long enough for the other ships to escape. Overload sequence complete. Chief Santos reported, "All teams get to the escape pods now." "Chief, how long until detonation?" 60 seconds, Captain." The Liberty shuddered under enemy fire. Its heavy armor held, but warning lights flashed across the bridge. The ship could not survive much more punishment. "Captain," Amy said, her voice steady despite the chaos, "escape pods are away. Chief Santos and his team are clear." Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Coalition fleet had reached minimum safe distance. His people were safe. The Liberty was not. "All hands, brace for impact," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. The facility exploded like a small star being born. The blast wave expanded outward at incredible speed, carrying debris and radiation across the entire system. The Liberty, still fighting enemy ships at close range, disappeared into the heart of the explosion. When the blast faded and space grew quiet again, Commander Zilthara's sensors detected a single, badly damaged ship drifting in the debris field. "Morrison," she called over the radio, "respond, please." The response came several minutes later, weak but clear. "This is Captain Morrison. The Liberty is damaged but intact. We are ready to assist with rescue operations.